Good evening, everyone. My name is Amanda Blood, and I'm here today to talk to you about our Lord and Saviour Jesus Christ. And that's a lie. That's not what I'm here to talk to you about. So today I'm going to be here talking about true crime. I'm probably going to do my makeup in a lot of my videos, just so that I've got something to keep my hands occupied with, I guess. First thing that I want to do is put on my little ears. Bam. You will notice that I have the majority of my makeup done, and the reason being for this is because I can't talk and do something else at the same time. Apparently multitasking is not something that I have the capability to do. So yeah, as I was saying, the story that I wanted to do first is the story of Elisa Lam, because it's got really popular in recent months, which has definitely got something to do with the fact that Netflix has done a documentary about the disappearance of Elisa Lam. However, this is one of those cases that has stuck with me since I first heard about it. And I did first hear about it back in 2013 when she did go missing. You ever do that thing where you realise you've made a cup of tea and it's now been sat there for like an hour and it's probably cold? I've just done that. Just going to put that to the side and pretend I didn't forget about it, but here we are. Elisa Lam. She was born in British Columbia, Vancouver, Canada. Her parents actually emigrated from China to Canada, and they did actually open up a restaurant, and she spent the majority of her adolescent years in Vancouver. So she was a student at the University Hill Secondary, and she also attended the University of British Columbia. She was very active on social media. She notoriously used Tumblr as her platform of choice, and she also had a blog which she obviously wrote into. However, Tumblr was definitely the platform that she preferred to use. She showed her interests in fashion, her interest in art. She gave little snapshots into her life, giving little statuses every so often about what she was doing, what she wanted to do. She spoke about how she wanted to travel and how she really just wanted to meet people and connect with different people from all walks of life. I told her I didn't have the ability to talk and do something at the same time. So I think it's probably safe to say that her dream was to travel. That is definitely one of the things that she wrote about the most on her Tumblr page. And when she was 21, she ultimately turned that dream into a reality, and she decided it was time to start travelling. She decided to do this alone. She didn't want to travel with other people, which is a really big thing for a young woman to do. I mean, the world is a scary place for anybody, but when you're young, you're quite naive, I guess. You're probably not really aware of the risks that are potentially involved in travelling alone. Ta-da! So while she was travelling, she actually ventured into California. One day she visited the San Diego Zoo, and the same day she then checked into the hotel stay on Main, which is more commonly known as the Cecil Hotel. The Cecil Hotel is notoriously known for its checkered past. It is actually situated in downtown Los Angeles in an area which is known as Skid Row. Now, Skid Row is approximately 11.2 kilometres squared area of LA, which is very well known for being one of the worst areas, not just in California, but in the entire United States itself. I think what makes Skid Row most known for being a bit of a bad neighbourhood is probably the level of homeless people that are actually residing within the streets of Skid Row itself. The area is known to have many social service and homeless shelters, making it a popular area for the homeless population. There are literally thousands of people that are sleeping on the streets of Skid Row, whether they be ex-convicts. There's also a high population of mentally ill people that literally get thrown out and they have nowhere else to go. They tend to get put in Skid Row for the reason that there is help available, though the help available is not particularly great. So if you were to take a walk down Skid Row, although it isn't really advisable, what you genuinely are going to be faced with is on either side of the sidewalks, it tends to be lined with homeless people. So you'll have tents, sleeping bags, piles of rubbish, hundreds and hundreds of people that literally line the streets because they don't have anywhere else to go. It's not uncommon to stumble across people that are suffering from mental episodes as well. There's been reported cases of mentally ill people roaming the streets with knives. There was one instance where a man had a machete. So it still baffles me today to realise that Elisa actually ended up there, because I don't think anybody really understands how she ended up there. It's a 50-block radius. Many of the people that live in Skid Row are considered to be dangerous. I wanted to give a little background on the hotel itself, just so that it had a bit of a backstory. So the Cecil Hotel was built in 1924, which was considered a really, really wealthy time for the United States. So the Cecil Hotel was built, it had approximately 700 rooms. It oozed the 1920s glamour, Art Deco. The hotel had a opulent white marble lobby with stained glass windows, and it just generally looked really impressive. So naturally the hotel was booming. However, it was very short-lived because just 5 short years after the Cecil Hotel was built, the United States actually went into the Great Depression, which obviously was then catastrophic for everybody, but also for the hotel itself. The hotel did have its time to shine again. In the 1940s, it saw a flourish again, but as time passed, it began to steadily decline again. It also began to get quite a reputation behind it too, which understandably didn't help with the success of the hotel. So the Cecil was known for its low rate rooms. It was working out that people could actually live within the Cecil Hotel for less than $400 a month. So it was perfect for low income people, ex-convicts, elderly, sexual offenders, things like that, that wouldn't be able to go back into the public and work full-time jobs and be able to buy houses or rent houses. It began to gain a reputation for being quite notorious with drug activity, and it was also a common ground for sex workers as well. I guess it was a safe place for them to go, should we say. The hotel does actually sport a really grisly past. It's had many suicides over the years. There's people that have fell out of the windows. There was one instance where a woman committed suicide, and she actually fell from the 9th floor and then landed on a man who was just walking the street, and it did actually take his life as well. There was also a couple of murders there too, and at one point Richard Ramirez, he's a very well-known serial killer. He went by the nickname the Night Stalker, and he was very, very high profile in the 1980s. It is reported that Ramirez actually stayed at the Cecil Hotel when he was going through his killing spree. It's reported that he would return to the hotel. Given the hotel's reputation, he would be able to walk in covered in blood and people would not really bat an eyelid, and then he'd be able to go up to his room, get clean, and he could basically repeat the process. In more recent years, there has been an attempt to restore the hotel back to its former glory. However, the plans were squashed very quickly because of the fact that there were people living within the hotel. It had gained a residential status, which halted the redevelopment of the building. Because of this, what they actually ended up doing was opening a secondary hotel called the Stay on Main. Now, the Stay on Main is generally classed as a completely separate hotel to the Cecil Hotel. However, it is obviously in the same building. So what you tend to find is the lower floors of the hotel were made up of people that were classed as long-term residents of the hotel, and then the next couple of floors were the Stay on Main, and then upwards from there it was the Cecil Hotel floors. Generally, they could be separated quite well. Stay on Main had its own entrance. It also had its own lobby. The only things generally that connected the two hotels together was the elevators and the stairwells. They did share those factors. So the history of the hotel is already bad before Elisa actually checked into the hotel. She actually checked in on January the 26th, 2013. She went to the San Diego Zoo, and that is when she found herself then checking into the Cecil Hotel, aka the Stay on Main. She would talk to her family every day, letting them know how excited she was to be in LA and to be exploring, and her family were pretty happy with her traveling alone. She checked in daily with them. There was no cause for concern. There was nothing untoward going on at the time. I find that they get lower and lower as the time goes on. I need to sit up. So on the 1st of February 2013, that was the day that Elisa was actually due to check out of the hotel. Her family were growing concerned because they hadn't actually heard from her that day, so they contacted LAPD and they wanted to file a missing persons report because it was very unlike her to do something like this. The hotel itself, they also cleared her room of all of her belongings because she missed her checkout time. They made it very aware when interviewed by the police that it's not uncommon for people that visit the hotel to leave their belongings there. So they cleared her room of everything, cleaned, and then stored all of her personal effects. Her family then decided that they were going to fly out to LA and help search for Elisa because at that point she'd only been missing for one day and there weren't really any cause for concerns at the time. So the police go to the Cecil Hotel and they are granted permission to do a search of the hotel. However, again, because it has residential people living there was only certain parts of the hotel and certain rooms that they were actually allowed to search. So legally they conducted a search that they could. They also searched the roof of the hotel, and they also used a canine unit to search for Elisa's scent. Now obviously that scent was picked up in her room, however it wasn't really found anywhere else. One place that one of the dogs did detect her scent was by a window, but at that point the scent was lost. So naturally the first people that the police decided to interview were the hotel staff itself. They reported that she was always alone and that she wasn't travelling with anybody else. Police then did a search of a local bookstore after being informed by a member of staff at the hotel that that is where Elisa went one day. They talked to the manager of the bookstore and she reports that she was outgoing, she was very, very lively, and she was very friendly. After 5 days, the police had no leads and they were no closer to finding where Elisa was. What they decided to do was release flyers around the neighbourhood and post online her disappearance, which obviously gained attention from the media and from the public. On the 15th of February, after searching hundreds and hundreds of hours of CCTV footage, the police decided to release a clip that they had found of Elisa, which had been found via the Cecil Hotel's CCTV system. Now, given the size of the hotel itself, you would expect that they would have quite an extensive security system in place, that there would be CCTV cameras on every floor, but strangely enough, that wasn't the case. There weren't actually a great deal of cameras available. So while they were searching the CCTV for Elisa, there actually wasn't much of her at all. They managed to find a clip of her exiting the hotel where she was actually greeted by two men that were carrying a parcel. She took the parcel from them and then went back into the hotel, and then again you don't see her on any more CCTV. When the police were searching through her belongings, they did actually find the parcel, and it was actually books that she'd purchased from the bookstore that she couldn't carry back to the hotel with her the day that she purchased them. So the two men that actually bought the books to her, they were then dismissed as suspects, and the case again started to grow cold, which was again when they decided it was time to release the CCTV footage. that they did have of Elisa, which was considered to be somewhat suspicious. I'd say this clip is what gained worldwide attention in terms of her disappearance. I remember watching this video years ago. It's approximately 4 minutes long. It's oddly disturbing. Elisa only actually appears in about 2.5 minutes of that clip. I am going to break down the clip now for you. It is readily available to view online if you do want to view it. As I say, it is quite disturbing. Not from a perspective of there's things happening in the video that are disturbing, just that it's peculiar and it's eerie, and knowing that this was the last time that she was ever seen alive just makes it all the more concerning and daunting to watch. So I'm going to read this now from my paper because there is absolutely no way that I'm going to be able to remember the full sequence of the video itself. So the video is recorded from an elevator surveillance camera. So it shows Elisa enter the elevator. She selects a floor that she wants to go to, and then she stands in the rear corner, but the elevator door doesn't actually close. She then edges forwards. She quickly scans to the right and the left of the hallway and retreats back into the elevator. Stands back to the wall, so she's on the opposite side now. She stands back to the wall and she appears to hide behind the control panel of the elevator itself. She's very much pressed tightly into that little corner. And I can only assume that the reason why she would do this is because if anybody was to walk past the open door of the elevator and they did look in, they wouldn't be able to see her from that point. So the doors again don't close. She peers a second time to the right. She does a bit of a strange hop out and she looks to the left. She takes a few strange steps, sort of to and fro, and then she hops back into the elevator again. So she peers a second time to the right of the hallway. She then strangely hops out. She's now looking to the left-hand side of the hallway. So as I say, she's looking to the left. She takes a few steps, which the steps themselves, they are quite odd. She goes back into the elevator and then she goes straight back out of the elevator again. She then has her back to the camera and she sort of shuffles along to the left hand side, so only actually her right arm is visible in the surveillance camera. She's got her back up against the wall, so she stands there for quite a while. You can see that she raises her arm at one point. She turns to re-enter the elevator. She has both arms held out and she sort of holds onto what would be the doors of the elevator as she goes in. She returns to the control panel. She starts pushing every button on the elevator, I guess in the hopes that the doors will actually close. So she starts walking out again, but as she's walking out, what she actually does is, which I find quite concerning, she tucks her hair behind her ears and she actually holds herself here as if she's scared or anxious. So she walks out again. She's standing to the left hand side. She does a bit of an odd lean to the right hand side and she starts making strange gestures with her hands. Now some people have said that she's talking to somebody while she's doing this. At one point it looks as if she's sort of pawing at the air, which is again really strange behaviour. At that point she walks off to the left and she disappears from view. The camera obviously continues to film for approximately another minute and a half. So after about 20 seconds, the elevator door does close. It then reopens again. There's another 20 seconds or so, the door closes again. And when the door reopens, it's on another floor. I'm assuming perhaps the next floor down. There's nobody then that gets on the elevator. There's no sign of Elisa, and that is actually the last time that we see Elisa alive. So a few days after the surveillance footage of Elisa was captured, hotel guests has actually started complaining about the plumbing. They were saying that the water pressure was lacking when they turned the taps on. The water was coming out of the taps and it appeared very dark. People were also drinking the water and they reported that there was a strange, sickly sweet taste to the water. So eventually the hotel manager, she contacted one of the maintenance guys, Santiago Lopez, who came out. He went to one of the guest rooms to try and distinguish a fault with the plumbing, find out what was going on, but obviously he couldn't find the source of the problem. So what he then decided to do was he was going to go out to the roof of the hotel. Now on the roof there was I think there were 1,000-gallon water tanks up there, which did control all of the plumbing within the hotel. They supplied water to every room, and they also supplied water to the kitchens. So when Santiago got to the roof, he obviously walked over to the water tanks. They had a ladder that they would use to climb up the tank itself, and then they would be able to open a hatch, and the hatch was approximately a 20-pound hatch. So it's reported that Santiago obviously removed the hatch. He looked into the water tank itself. He actually saw the body of Elisa floating face up. He reported that she looked like a ghost. She was very white, and he also noticed that she was completely naked. So after discovering her body, hotel management then called the LAPD to come and assess the situation. So when the LAPD did actually arrive, they noticed that the hatch itself was too small for them to be able to take Elisa's body out. So what they actually did was they drained the tank, where they then cut a hole into the tank to remove her body. They then noted that her clothes were at the bottom. They also noticed that her watch was there, and that also the key to the room that she was staying in was there too. That's a cat. So this is where the speculation surrounding her death really started to spiral out of control. Many people believe that she was under the influence of a drug such as LSD or ecstasy, because of the way that she was acting in the video. She seemed anxious and a little bit paranoid too, which are obviously common effects of both of those drugs. Others believe she was trying to escape an assailant, or that she'd perhaps been kidnapped and she was trying to get away from the kidnapper. The footage itself was taken on the 14th floor of the hotel, which is just one floor down from the roof. The 14th floor was not the floor that Elisa was staying on at the time. People also believe that at one point in the footage there was a person standing to the left of Elisa. At one point there appears to be the tip of a shoe visible. It's just before Elisa disappears off camera. It's noted that Elisa is potentially barefoot, or she is wearing shoes, sort of like flip-flops, open-toed shoes. As she walks off camera, the tip of the shoe then retreats backwards, as if whoever the shoe belongs to walked away with her. So then people started assuming that this person who owned the shoe was her murderer, basically. People were assuming that they were the one that put her in the tank, and that they shut her in there, whether she was alive at the time or whether they murdered her and then dumped her into the tank. Another theory is that the footage itself has been tampered with. The timestamp on the footage is actually very blurry, very grainy, which many people have speculated that it shouldn't be like that, and there's no reason for it to be like that. So you can't accurately judge the time that the footage was filmed. People have also noticed that at one point it seems that at least a minute's worth of footage has disappeared due to the timestamp. The numbers, they suddenly jump from one number to a completely different number, and it just wouldn't be able to fall into that synchronization if a chunk of the video hadn't been taken away. At one point you can actually visibly see the elevator door, when it's open to its full extent, it suddenly jumps by several inches, as if again there is a gap in the recording. On the 21st of February, the coroner's office issued a finding of accidental death. Her body was moderately decomposed when she was found. It showed severe water damage, such as bloating, and that her skin had a green tinge to it, which coroners believed meant that she had been in the water from the time of her disappearance up until when she was actually found. There were no signs of sexual abuse, and there were no signs of any physical trauma to her body. In fact, her body had no marks, lacerations, cuts or bruises at all to it. The toxicology report showed that there were no recreational drugs inside her system at the time of her death, and that the alcohol in her body was very, very minimal, to the extent that it wouldn't have given her any effects that she had been drinking. It did obviously uncover that she was taking prescription medication which was designed to treat bipolar disorder. She had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and she was being treated for that. However, the amount that was in her body meant that she had actually been under medicating herself, or that she had actually stopped taking the medication very, very close to the time when she died. So months went by and Elisa's family still had no answers, and it actually took until June 2013 for the LA County Coroner's Office to rule Elisa's death as an accidental death by drowning. Although her body didn't actually show any signs of drowning, the autopsy report did confirm that she didn't have any water in her stomach, nor did she have any froth in her airways, which are two of the telltale signs that somebody has drowned. Now, what they did say was that they believed her bipolar disorder was a key part in the reason as to why she was ultimately found dead. In the lead up to her death, hotel workers had spoken to the police and said that she had been saying strange things in the hotel lobby. She had originally been in a shared room with other women in the hotel, and she'd been leaving odd notes to people telling them to go away and to get out. So eventually she was actually moved to a room on her own. I feel like ultimately they used her bipolar disorder as an excuse to stop trying to find any further evidence into her disappearance. It was kind of like, oh well, she had bipolar, she got into that tank herself. They kind of stopped trying to find out what had actually happened to her. Frustratingly enough, the investigation gave no explanation as to how she died, though we were originally told by the police that the hatch was on the tank at her time of death. Lopez, the maintenance worker, did confirm that the hatch was off when he found her. Another thing that concerned people was how she actually got onto the roof in the first place. The fire exits and the stairwells, they were actually alarmed, so if she did open them, it would have triggered the alarm, and no staff within the hotel reported that an alarm was going off. It would be going off in the lobby, which obviously wouldn't be ignored. The only access that she actually had to the roof was via a window, which would then take her into the fire escape. The only access then to the roof was from a vertical ladder. There are actually missing reports as well. The rape and the fingernail kits, they were never actually recovered or updated, which many are left to wonder if they were actually ever processed. Even the pathologists that were involved, they had mixed feelings about the way that she died, and they weren't entirely convinced that the final ruling was accurate. We've also never been able to locate her mobile phone. We know that she had a mobile phone because she was obviously speaking to her family on it. She would be updating her social media, things like that. But that was never actually found. To this day, there are actually many theories and conspiracy theories surrounding Elisa's death, one of which discusses the similarities between Elisa's death and the horror film Dark Water, in which a young girl actually dies in a water tank. What is even more strange is the fact that the clothing that the little girl was found to be wearing was a red hoodie, very similar to the one that Eliza was wearing, and this seems like too much of a coincidence to a lot of people. Another one is in relation to the tuberculosis outbreak that was happening around the time of Elisa's death in the area. It is reported that the Cecil Hotel itself had a slight outbreak of tuberculosis. However, Elisa's autopsy revealed that she did not have tuberculosis at the time of death. The most notable thing regarding the tuberculosis outbreak is the name of the test that was used to detect tuberculosis in people at the time. This test was around before, I need to put that out there, it was around before Elisa died, was called Lam Elisa. I just can't get my head around this. There is no way that that is a coincidence. It can't be possible. It's literally her name backwards, Elisa Lam, and the test is Lam Eliza. So this case has been on my mind since 2013. I've lost many nights sleep thinking about it, just wondering what the hell happened. I have my own theory of what happened. There is no right or wrong at the end of the day. I'm not here to judge one theory from another. I'm just here to get the story across and make people aware of it more than anything. I hope Eliza is at peace now. I offer my deepest condolences to her family. They've never got the closure that they deserve. And I don't think we're ever going to know what exactly happened to her, which is horrible. So that was the story of Elisa Lam. This is the first upload that I've ever done. There's going to be a lot of things that I'm going to need to change and I'm going to need to tweak. If you did enjoy it, please do give me a like and hit that subscribe button. Be nice to see you in the next one. I'm not too sure when that'll be yet, but it will be coming. Thank you very much for watching. Bye. Before we start, I'm most definitely going to have to do this.